Vice President Kamala Harris resumed her conversations on Reproductive Freedom tour, this time with Emmy Award-winning actress Sheryl Lee Ralph. The conversation centered around abortion access and women's health care during a campaign event in Pennsylvania's Salus University in Montgomery County. Ralph tells the story of how she almost lost her son 30 years ago.
2 children, son and a daughter, Etienne and Ivy. And when my son was born, it almost didn't happen. I had lost my amniotic fluid. And most of us know in here, that's the fluid that surrounds the baby in the womb. I had lost it all. And I was about ready to have what they called a dry birth, which is complicated. My God, I haven't thought about this, which is complicated, and the survival of the child is, wow. So I was in a moment where I was so close to birth and death at the same time. And this doctor says to me, you have one chance right now for a viable delivery. I'm listening to this as I'm trying to deliver my child. Suppose my child was not viable, and in that moment, you're going to, now, you know what it looks like. In that moment, if that doctor were to deliver and excavate the child from my womb, they would have gone to prison. These are the kind of things we have got to think about. That happened to me. But that was 30 years ago. I had more rights 30 years ago.
Vice President Harris warned the crowd that abortion restrictions in more than a dozen states could spread nationwide if Republican candidate Donald Trump is elected again, and more women could be affected by the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which took place 2 years ago. Ralph and Harris both say it's time to trust that women can make the best decisions about their bodies.
And when we talk about freedom, why is it that we are still having to have a conversation over and over and over again about how important it is to trust women? Why do we have to keep talking about the choices that women must make for themselves? And why are we having to talk to so many women to let them know how important they are in this re-election on this subject, and how important it is to vote for your own best interest?
So here's what I would say. I often paraphrase, I think it's such a lovely, important saying from Coretta Scott King. And she famously said, the fight for civil rights, and you can insert there the fight for equality and freedom, must be fought and won with each generation. And when she said that, I think she had 2 points in mind. One is that it is the nature of these fights that whatever we gain will not be permanent. It's the nature of it. Therefore, the second point, we must be vigilant and not be overwhelmed when these moments happen, because the nature of it, the very nature of it, is we must be vigilant to hold on to these rights.
You know, Kelly, when you look at these mainstream channels and these polls, and they talk about, oh my goodness, Vice President Harris is such a drag on the ticket. The reality is, I would counter that. I think if the Biden administration, the Biden campaign was smart, they would be putting her on the road a hell of a lot more. Not just, because she's having her economic empowerment tour. This is about reproductive rights. but they should be expanding what she's talking about. And the bottom line is, look, we know Biden is not doing as many events as possible. I would have her on the road multiple days a week. And what I would also be doing is I will be having rallies. I will be literally having her out there giving speeches, firing people up, talking to African Americans, talking to women, talking to young people. They should be using her more.
I completely agree with that. And it is frustrating to see because in 2020, my understanding is the whole reason that Kamala Harris was chosen, well, I shouldn't say the whole reason, but a large reason that Kamala Harris was chosen to be our vice president is because of her intersectionality. She is Black. She is of South Asian descent. She is a woman. She is married. Like, she has so many lanes that cross through her to the point where she is so identifiable with everybody. She has a place in everybody's mind because there is something about her that everybody can relate to. And it is frustrating to me as a comms person to see such a rare jewel in comms not be utilized as much as she could be. For whatever reason, I'm not in the Biden camp. I don't know why, but if this election is as vital and as crucial as everybody is touting it out to be, if we really have to vote to save our democracy again, vote to save our lives again, why don't we use who we have, in my opinion, for the first time? Because she wasn't really utilized on the trail last time either. At least do it right this time so that we can have something to relate to, so that we can have something to fight for as opposed to simply vote against.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think last time you had COVID. And so, I mean, I remember, my goodness, being on the campaign trail in 2020, and you're out there, and we're having these outdoor rallies and things along those lines. But again, to me, I think when you see these conversations, when she's paired with a Sheryl Lee Ralph, when you have folks like that, to me, you do more of that. Matt, you make that more interesting. You make it more engaging, because it's about touching the people. It's about being where they are. And I would dare say, look, I was there on Monday when she was in Detroit, and one of the things that they did, and I understand why they do it this way, but also I think it's a mistake. So, for instance, they had the main event, okay, which is the Charles Wright Museum. Then she did some interviews afterwards. Then she met with some pastoral leaders and community leaders. Well, media wasn't in there. Well, we should have been in there. The reason I know they want to have frank conversations, but they need to be able to show her engaging with community-based groups as well. And I just think that it's smart politics to put her with regular, ordinary people as much as possible, to be having regular, ordinary conversations. And I get the economic empowerment tour, but frankly, I really think, I remember when I think Obama did one. I think he went to Southern, and it was a Q&A. Do the same with her. Give her an opportunity to be able to take some questions for people in the audience and have that. To me, that just makes more sense and better use of her skill set.
I think that's right, but I think that they're afraid of running away on the fence voters, particularly white Midwestern voters, who may view her as divisive because of coverage for her. And I think it's stupid because she's obviously effective at communicating the Biden administration's points, and in doing so with the necessary gravitas to really make those points go home. So I think they do need to utilize her better. And I know we talked recently about that hit piece, about basically what is her position and all of this stuff. And the reality of it is she's a Black woman, so she will be judged more harshly than anyone else. But she's very effective at communicating their points. And I think the Biden administration needs to not be afraid to embrace that and to utilize her. But I think one thing we have to talk about with this story in particular is before we came on the air today, I read a story that the Texas Supreme Court just issued an opinion today, 21-page opinion, where they said a woman who had paid her doctor to perform a tubal ligation where the doctor did not actually perform it and she had a baby was not entitled to emotional damages, mental anguish damages, and all of that because the Texas Supreme Court said a baby is a blessing and not an injury by virtue of the fact that she did not get the reproductive right, that she had paid for with her doctor. I think they construed it wrong because they tried to make it about abortion, and it's really more about a breach of contract if you consider that she paid the doctor for the procedure. But the bigger point is this. Women across this country and anybody with their eyes open should be concerned about the fact that courts and politicians are eroding our rights in front of our very eyes. And I think right now it is the time for the Biden administration to run full speed ahead to not only talk to its own base, but to run to those other voters who are on the fence and who don't like Donald Trump and who don't like the Republicans to say, this is an attack on your decision about your own body. Even if you don't agree with people's decision, you should agree that they have the right to make the decision. And I think the Biden-Harris administration needs to be beating that drum very, very, very strongly, because if you notice, the Republicans, and particularly Mr. Trump, does not have a strong position on this. He keeps deferring to the states should have their own ability to choose. And I think that's because they know that that is no longer the feather in their cap. So I think the Biden administration needs to leverage that in its messaging and put her out there in the forefront.
Well, look, Michael, I said last year, and I still say it, that part of this issue is being on what I call an education and enlightenment tour. That's one of the things
right.
that needs to be happening, and I'm glad to see these here again. I mean, this right here is. I remember we were in Jackson, Mississippi, in 2020, and it was nothing but being in mass parking lots, and people were staying in cars. They couldn't get out. COVID was impacting all of that. And so it was just a totally different feel, if you will, in terms of campaigning than what we're seeing actually happen right now. But I absolutely think that she was in Detroit Monday.
Detroit, right.
Then, of course, in Pennsylvania today. Also, to taking advantage of the weekends. You have to have messengers. You have to have messengers who are talking about the message. And the message can't just be abortion. It can't be. And so I think, again, utilizing her. And what's interesting to me is I don't even understand why the campaign is not even using surrogates in a much more aggressive way. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to tell you straight up right now. I have not gotten a single email or a text message from the campaign saying, hey, we would like for somebody to come on.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even, they have a director of African-American media. I saw the announcement when she got hired. I've never even heard from her. And I'm sitting here going, it's May. If they are trying to run the 2020 campaign, they're going to lose. You can't. We're living at the cycles have moved so fast that how you run has to totally change. And I'm just not quite. And I see when they have Mitch Landrieu, and I see when they have the press secretary, the deputy press secretary on CNN and on CBS and ABC. But I'm like, y'all better be sending out a hell of a lot more messengers on a more frequent basis, because this idea of, well, the summer doldrum, we could just, June, July, conventions in August, we could start up in September. You're shortening your runway. And when you shorten your runway, you're running out of days. Right now, they have to be hitting people to go, oh, they've done that, they're going to fight for this, and this is what they want to accomplish over the next 4 years. Then you got to convince those people they're not registered to register. Then you got to get those people who are registered to then vote. You can't go from just, hey, vote, 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 if you're not even registered right now. Then you got to sit there and fight the temptation of the couch from folks who say, I don't think you've done enough. To me, that means using her in a much more effective way.
Yeah, I agree with you on some of that there. What's happening, the economic empowerment tour is brilliant. I hope that continues. I saw it in it, part of it in Atlanta. I saw a lot of it here in Detroit. The women's reproductive rights, because this is even more than just abortion. It's dealing with women's reproductive rights. That campaign, those interactions with people like Sheryl Lee Ralph are extremely important as well. I think the Biden-Harris campaign has to understand you can't deal with the traditional timeline of a campaign. Okay, whereas the campaigns don't peak in May. We all know that. But I think because of so many people don't like either Biden or Trump, at least at this point, and then you have you have more interest in third-party candidates, you have to really drive home the fact now of what has been accomplished. This is something I've talked about a lot on this show, especially with, for instance, the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, which saved the economy. And no Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for the bill. And the reason why it's so important to talk about what you accomplished is that bill passed in March 2021. Well, people just lump that in with what got accomplished with the two coronavirus bills, COVID-19 bills under Trump. They don't make a distinction. But it was Democrats that wrote the bill and Democrats only that voted for the bill. The other thing that has to happen is you have to call out Republican obstructionists. It was when we talk about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, all these George Floyd Justice Policing Act, but also the John Lewis Voting Rights Act especially. All these black people said they wanted this, right? The John Lewis Voting Rights Act. No Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. But they want to blame Biden for not getting passed. No, focus on those Republican senators, because it did pass the House of Representatives. It was only Democrats that voted for it. Focus on those 50 Republican senators, especially the 16 Republican sitting senators that voted to reauthorize the 1965 Voting Rights Act in 2006, but all 50 voted against it in 2021. So it's putting all this together. And Quentin Fulks and others from the Biden-Harris campaign should definitely come on. Roland Martin Unfiltered. This is black-owned media. Don't run from black-owned media. But I think, yes, things are going to ramp up. But I think they should be in more aggressive right now. Yeah. Even though it's May, more aggressive right now. Don't wait till after Labor Day to really get aggressive.
The runway shortens. That means you have fewer days. And so that's what they should be doing right now. So we'll see. But I'm like, y'all might want to get a move on it.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.